U.S. Russia relations are in their worst position, arguably, since the end of the Cold War. And there are no signs of immediate improvement on the horizon, certainly as we move into the U.S. presidential election. And there are two factors for us to consider why this is happening. The first is that because of the immense degree of distrust between President Donald Trump and the Congress, not only Democrats, but also a large number of Republicans, in how Donald Trump has handled relations with the Kremlin, the Congress has tended to lock in punitive measures against Russia, especially sanctions in the energy sector, which certainly President Trump himself cannot override, but any future U.S. president will not be able to override unless Congress deliberately removes them. And as we have seen from sanctions passed during the Cold War period, notably the Jackson-Vanik sanctions, it took Russia nearly 25 years to be graduated from sanctions, even after the Soviet Union had been gone for 2 decades. So the likelihood that the current U.S. sanctions on Russia will be lifted anytime soon is low. Because of that, the U.S. doesn't have a lot of bargaining power to try to induce Russia to take more constructive steps in the relationship, because a president doesn't have the carrot of being able to offer sanctions relief. And this is different than what we've seen with the Europeans, where European sanctions on Russia have to be renewed every 6 months. And if Europeans believe that there's been progress on Ukraine, on issues related to the Middle East, and so on, those sanctions can be modified, lifted, suspended. So the Europeans have a different incentive structure. The other problem is the United States no longer has a transatlantic consensus between Washington and its most important European allies on how to approach Russia. And the divergence now that we've seen between the Trump administration on one hand and the Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron administrations in Germany and France respectively, where both Merkel and Macron have decided that it is time to re-engage Russia. And if that means lessening some of the economic pressure, if it means incentivizing Russia to take steps, they're willing to break with Washington and in some cases come up against Washington, as we've seen with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which despite punitive U.S. sanctions on the pipeline, both Germany and France, as well as other European countries, are committed to seeing that project continue. So U.S.-Russia relations don't look like they're going to improve, and there's also a risk that transatlantic relationships are also going to be disrupted over the question of how best to deal with Russia.